What's up guys, Perry from Rockville here, and today we're gonna go over all of the controls, inputs, and outputs for the RPM1470. So starting at the top, we have the XLR inputs, which can be used to set up a microphone. So to show you how that works, I have a dynamic mic right here and an XLR cable. We're gonna plug the female end into the microphone here. Then we're gonna plug the male end into any of the available XLR inputs on our mixer. So for today, let's use channel 1. The next thing we're gonna wanna do is raise the gain knob, which sets the input level for our mic. Then we're gonna wanna raise the fader for channel 1, which will set the output for that channel. And for everything to be heard through our speakers, we're gonna raise the main left and right faders here. And now if I talk into my microphone, check 1, 2, you'll be able to hear my voice coming out of the speakers. You can also set up your condenser microphones the same exact way, except you're just gonna wanna activate the phantom power button here to power those condenser mics. Below the XLR input, we have the line input, which can be used to set up an instrument like a guitar or a keyboard or anything with a line level output. So for example, to set up a guitar, we're just gonna need a 1/4 inch instrument cable. We're gonna plug one end into the guitar. Then we can plug the other end into the same channel that we're using for our microphone or into another channel completely for more control. So let's plug it into channel 2. Next, we're gonna wanna set the gain knob to set the input. Then we'll raise the fader to set the output. And then again, you're gonna wanna make sure that the main left and right faders are raised so everything comes out of the speakers. So now if I raise the volume on my guitar and start to play, you'll hear it coming out of the speakers. To set up a keyboard or anything with the line level output, you're gonna follow the same exact steps. So this is a great live performance or rehearsal setup since you can have your microphone connected to one channel and your guitar connected to another channel and have them both playing at the same time. Below the line input, we have the insert so we can affect the channel that we're using with some outside gear or equipment. Below the line input, we have the inserts, which can be used to affect individual channels with outside effects. So for example, let's say I wanted to set up a compressor for channel 1 only. To do that, I would need a Y cable, plug the single end into the insert of channel 1, then plug the other ends into the send and return of that compressor. By doing this, we're sending the signal out to our compressor and it's coming back processed to channel 1. Below the insert, we have the gain knob like we mentioned earlier, which will set the input for whatever signal is coming into that channel. But if the signal is too loud to begin with, you can always use the pad button to lower it. Next, we have the EQ section for each channel where we can affect the high, mid, and low frequencies. So I'm just gonna use my microphone here to show you what each EQ knob does. So first we have the high knob here, and this affects the treble or high end of our signal. So if I lowered it all the way down, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, you don't hear as much presence coming out of my voice. And if I raise it all the way up, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, you hear a lot more of that high end. And then I can set it back to the middle, check 1, 2, for a nice balance. Next, we have the high mid knob, which affects the higher end of the mid frequencies. So if I lower that a little bit, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, you won't hear that much clarity. Then I can raise it all the way up, check 1, 2, comes out a little bit more. And then I can lower it, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, in the middle for a balance. Then we have the low mid, which will handle the lower frequencies of the mid-range section. So if I lowered that, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, there's not as much body coming through. If I raise it up, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, you hear a lot more of that low mid there. And then I can set it back to the middle, check 1, 2. Lastly, we have the low knob, which will affect the low end or bass frequencies. So if I lower that all the way, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, you won't hear that much bass or low end coming through. Or I can raise it, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, and then you hear a lot more bass and body coming through the voice. And then I can set it back to the middle, check 1, 2, so we have a flat EQ again. Below the EQ section, we have the send knob, which works with the send and return that we can set up by the top of the mixer here. So this way we can set up outside effects and have it affect any of the channels we want, as opposed to using the insert, which will only affect one channel. So again, let's use the compressor as the example. So you would take a 1/4-inch cable and plug it into the send here, plug the other end into the compressor. Then from there you would take another 1/4-inch cable and plug from the output of the compressor into the return of the mixer. After that, you would use the send knob for whichever channels you want affected by the compressor. Underneath that, we have the effects knob, which we can use with the digital effects processor here on our mixer. So we have a bunch of different effects we can choose from here between different reverbs, delays. We also have a chorus, flanger, phaser, and a rotary speaker. So to choose an effect to use, you're gonna use the preset select knob here and cycle between the different presets that are listed right here on top. So for right now, I'm gonna set it to 5, which is the spring reverb. We also have these 2 parameter knobs that we can use to fine-tune the effect. So for the spring reverb, we can use parameter 1 to affect the time of that reverb and parameter 2 to affect the damping of the reverb. We're also gonna wanna raise this effects knob here to set the effects level throughout the mixer. We also wanna raise this effects fader here so that the effects is heard through the output. And then we'll wanna raise the effects knob for whichever channel we want to have that effect. And now if I talk into my microphone, check 1 2, check 1 2, you'll hear that spring reverb in there. Again, we have a bunch of different effects to choose from, so I can switch to one of the delays. So I'm gonna set it to preset 12, for example. That's gonna set the effects processor to the ping pong delay. And with that, I can use processor 1 to affect the time of the delay and processor 2 to affect the feedback. So let's check out this effect now. Check. So there's a lot of cool effects on there, so feel free to experiment with any of these and find the one that you want to use. We also have the effects mute, which will mute the whole FX section in general. Below that, we have the pan knob, which we can use to send the signal either to the left channel of speakers or to the right channel of speakers. So for example, if I set it to the left, check 1 2, check 1 2, you'll hear my voice coming out of the left speaker. And if I set it to the right, check 1 2, check 1 2, you'll hear my voice coming out of the right speaker. Below we have the mute buttons, which will mute the channel overall. And then we have the solo button, which will solo out any channel and mute whichever other channels aren't soloed. Then we have the fader, which again will set the output for whichever channel we're using. So that covers channels 1 through 12. Now let's talk about channels 13 and 14. Like I mentioned, we can use these channels for our MP3 or Bluetooth device. So I can use the RCA inputs here to connect my MP3 device with an RCA to aux cable, or I can connect any smartphone or tablet to the speaker through Bluetooth. To connect a Bluetooth device, I can press on this sources button here. Then from there, I can use the skip forward or go back buttons to switch between the different sources. And we're gonna cycle between them until we see the VT for Bluetooth and click on it by using the pause play button. From here, it's gonna set the mixer to Bluetooth mode so we can pair our smartphone and tablet. So I'm gonna take my smartphone right here and go into the Bluetooth settings. Search for the device that reads RPM1470 and click on it to pair. And then you'll see on your Bluetooth device that you're connected to the mixer. To hear the Bluetooth device or your MP3 player, you're also gonna wanna raise the volume fader for channels 13 and 14. And we also have a 2-band EQ with the high and low frequency knobs so we can morph the sound a little bit to our liking. So let's go ahead and hear how it sounds. Sounds great. We can also change the sound of the mixer with the 7-band EQ here. So you'll see we have a 7-band EQ for the left channel of speakers and a 7-band EQ for the right channel of speakers. One way this could be helpful is that if you feel like the right channel of speakers is lacking high end, you can adjust the high end with the 7-band EQ for the right channel only. And same thing goes for the left channel. If you may feel like it's lacking low end, you can adjust the low end for the left channel only. There's also an EQ kill button, which will bypass the EQ in case you want to compare and contrast sounds. We also have the USB input here, so if you wanted to play music from a USB thumb drive, you're also going to use channels 13 and 14 to raise the level for that. We also have the phone's input here, so we can hear everything coming through the mixer through those headphones if we want. We also have the FX switch input here to connect a device that can turn the FX on or off. And the last thing I want to point out, which is really cool, is the RCA record output, so we can take the signal of everything coming from our mixer and send it out to an interface or recording setup. You can also use the playback buttons here to pause or play your music, go back a track or go forward a track, switch the sources or repeat your tracks, and enter any of the different menus available using the enter button here. So hopefully this helped explain all of the controls, inputs, and outputs on your RPM1470. But of course, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to reach out to our customer support team through phone or email. As always, I'm Perry from Rockville, and we'll see you guys next time.